My name is Vanessa Reid, and I let my mother plan my wedding. That was my first mistake. The second was believing she actually wanted me to be happy. 3 days before I walked down the aisle, she orchestrated a scheme so twisted, so calculated, that it nearly destroyed everything I'd spent years building. But what she didn't anticipate was that my fiancé, Daniel, wore more than a tuxedo to work. He carried a federal badge. And when the truth unraveled in front of 200 guests, flashing cameras, and a ballroom full of witnesses, it wasn't my marriage that shattered. It was her carefully constructed facade. Now she's facing consequences she never saw coming, and I'm standing in a life I almost let her steal from me. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. The rain had stopped by the time I pulled into the venue parking lot, but the sky still held that bruised, unfinished look, like it hadn't quite decided whether to clear or storm again. I sat in my car longer than I should have, hands gripping the steering wheel, staring at the stone archway ahead. The Riverside Estate. It looked exactly like the brochure promised. Elegant, timeless, draped in ivy and soft lighting. The kind of place people saved for years to book. I had saved for years. Not for this venue specifically, but for the freedom to make my own choices without her voice in my head, correcting, redirecting, diminishing. My phone buzzed on the passenger seat. Daniel's name lit up the screen. I picked it up and read his message. Almost there. You okay? I typed back quickly. Yeah. Just sitting with it for a second. His reply came instantly. Take your time. I love you. 3 words. Simple. Steady. The kind of certainty I'd spent most of my life convinced I didn't deserve. I got out of the car and smoothed down my jacket. The air smelled clean, like wet pavement and fresh mulch. Someone had strung delicate white lights along the walkway leading to the main entrance. They swayed gently in the breeze, casting small shifting shadows across the stone. I walked slowly, letting my boots crunch against the gravel. It felt good to hear something solid beneath me. Inside, the coordinator was waiting near the reception desk with a clipboard and an oversized smile. She wore a headset and moved with the kind of brisk efficiency that suggested she'd done this 1,000 times and would do it 1,000 more. Her name was Kelly. She had kind eyes and a firm handshake, and she didn't ask invasive questions, which I appreciated. We have the final walkthrough scheduled in about 20 minutes, she said, glancing at her notes. Your mother called earlier to confirm a few last-minute additions to the seating chart. I felt my stomach tighten. Additions? Kelly nodded, flipping through her papers. She mentioned a few extended family members. Cousins, I think. She said you'd approved it. I hadn't. But that was how it always went. My mother would make a decision, tell people I'd agreed, and by the time I found out, it was too late to push back without looking difficult or ungrateful. I smiled tightly. Right. Extended family. Kelly didn't seem to notice the tension in my voice. She gestured toward the main ballroom. Let's start with the ceremony space. You're going to love what we've done with the florals. The ballroom took my breath away. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the river, and the late afternoon light poured in like liquid gold. Round tables draped in soft linen filled the space, each one centered with arrangements of white peonies and eucalyptus. It was understated, elegant, and nothing like the elaborate crystal and rose gold nightmare my mother had tried to push on me 6 months ago. This is beautiful, I said quietly. Kelly beamed. Your vision really came together. We worked hard to keep it intimate. Personal. I wanted to tell her that this wasn't entirely my vision. That half of these choices had been battles. That my mother had spent weeks trying to convince me that simple meant cheap, that understated meant forgettable, that anything less than excessive was a reflection of failure. But I didn't say any of that. I just nodded and followed Kelly through the rest of the tour. By the time Daniel arrived, I was standing near the back terrace, looking out at the river. He came up behind me and wrapped his arms around my waist, resting his chin on my shoulder. Hey, he said softly. You doing okay? I leaned back into him. I think so. He kissed the side of my head. That's not a yes. I turned to face him. His eyes were calm, steady, the same look he gave me every time I spiraled. It's just a lot, I admitted. She's already making changes. Adding people. Taking over. Again. Daniel frowned. What kind of changes? Extra guests. People I've never even met. Cousins she suddenly remembered exist. He was quiet for a moment, then said, "Do you want me to talk to her?" I shook my head. No. It'll just make it worse. She'll say I'm being controlling. That I'm shutting her out. That I don't appreciate everything she's done. His jaw tightened. Everything she's done, he repeated, voice flat. Vanessa, she hasn't paid for a single thing. You have. We have. I know. Then why are you letting her act like this is her show? It was a fair question. One I didn't have a good answer for. Because it's easier than fighting? Because I'm tired? Because some part of me still hopes that if I just let her have this, she'll finally be proud of me? I didn't say any of that out loud. I just shrugged. She's my mom. Daniel studied my face for a long moment, then pulled me close again. Okay. But if she crosses a line, we handle it. Together. I nodded against his chest, letting his heartbeat ground me. The rehearsal dinner that night was held at a small Italian restaurant downtown. My mother had insisted on hosting it, which should have been my first warning sign. She arrived early, dressed in a cream silk blouse and tailored pants, her hair swept into an elegant twist. She looked polished, composed, and in complete control. She greeted Daniel's parents warmly, complimented the wine selection, and made a toast about family and new beginnings that had everyone smiling and clinking glasses. She was performing. And she was good at it. Halfway through the evening, she pulled me aside near the restroom hallway. Her smile was still in place, but her eyes were sharp. We need to talk about the ceremony processional, she said quietly. I thought we finalized that weeks ago. We did, but I think it would be better if Melanie walked down first. Before Nicole. I blinked. Nicole is my maid of honor. Melanie is a bridesmaid. The order is already set. My mother's smile didn't waver. I know, sweetie. But Melanie is your sister. It sends a better message. Family first. Nicole is family, I said, keeping my voice low. She's been my best friend since college. She's stood by me through everything. My mother's expression shifted, just slightly. A flicker of impatience crossed her face before she smoothed it away. I'm not saying Nicole isn't important. I'm saying optics matter. People will notice. People will talk. Let them, I said. The order stays. She studied me for a moment, then sighed like I was being unnecessarily difficult. Fine. But don't blame me when people whisper. She turned and walked back to the table, her heels clicking sharply against the tile floor. I stood there for a moment, hands trembling slightly, before heading to the bathroom to splash cold water on my face. When I returned, Daniel was watching me from across the room. He raised an eyebrow. I shook my head slightly. Later, I mouthed. He nodded, but his expression told me he already knew something had happened. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of small talk and forced smiles. My mother held court at the head of the table, charming Daniel's aunts and uncles, laughing at his father's jokes, playing the role of gracious hostess. No one else seemed to notice the tightness around her mouth when she looked at me. No one else caught the way she corrected my stories, subtly reframed my accomplishments, redirected conversations away from anything that centered me too much. But I noticed. I always noticed. By the time we said our goodbyes, I was exhausted. Daniel drove us back to my apartment in silence, his hand resting on my knee. When we pulled into the parking garage, he finally spoke. What did she say to you? I hesitated. She wanted to change the processional. Put Melanie ahead of Nicole. He exhaled slowly. And you said no. I said no. Good. He turned to look at me. Vanessa, I need you to hear this. You don't owe her control over your life. You don't owe her approval over your choices. You don't owe her anything. I know, I said quietly. Do you? Because every time she pulls something like this, you fold. I'm not folding, I said, defensive. I told her no tonight. After how many years of saying yes? The question hung in the air between us. I didn't answer. I didn't know how to. We went inside and got ready for bed in silence. Daniel fell asleep quickly, his breathing deep and even. I lay awake staring at the ceiling, replaying the evening in my head. My mother's smile. Her toast. Her corrections. Her control. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. And underneath it all, the familiar ache of wanting her to just be happy for me. To just let me have this one thing without making it about her. The next morning, I woke up to 17 missed calls. 12 from my mother. 3 from Melanie. 2 from my Aunt Lorraine. My stomach dropped. I sat up and checked my voicemail. The first message was from my mother, her voice tight and clipped. Vanessa, call me immediately. We have a serious problem. The second message was similar. The third was Melanie. Nessa, Mom is losing it. Something about the florist? Call her back before she has a stroke. I dialed my mother's number with shaking hands. She picked up on the first ring. Where have you been? She snapped. I was asleep. It's 7 in the morning. Well, you need to wake up because your florist just cancelled. What? She cancelled. Said she had a family emergency and couldn't fulfill the order. 2 days before your wedding, Vanessa. 2 days. My chest tightened. That doesn't make sense. She confirmed everything last week. I know, my mother said, her tone dripping with frustration. But apparently something came up and now we have no flowers. No centerpieces. No bouquets. Nothing. I felt panic rising in my throat. Okay. Okay, let me call her. Let me figure out what happened. I already called her, my mother interrupted. She was very apologetic but firm. She's out. Done. I sat there, phone pressed to my ear, trying to process what I was hearing. This doesn't make sense, I repeated. She wouldn't just cancel like that. Well, she did. And now I have to fix it. Again. I'm calling every florist in a 50-mile radius. You're welcome. She hung up before I could respond. I stared at my phone, dread settling heavy in my chest. Daniel stirred beside me. What's wrong? The florist cancelled. He sat up immediately. What do you mean cancelled? I don't know. My mom says she had a family emergency. 2 days before the wedding. That's convenient, he said, voice flat. What are you saying? I'm saying your mother has been trying to control every detail of this wedding since day one. And now, suddenly, the one vendor you picked without her input mysteriously cancels? Vanessa, that's not a coincidence. I wanted to argue. I wanted to tell him he was being paranoid. But deep down, a small voice whispered that he might be right. I got dressed quickly and drove to the florist's shop. It was closed. A handwritten sign on the door read, "Closed due to family emergency. Apologies for any inconvenience." I called the number again. It went straight to voicemail. I stood on the sidewalk outside the shop, feeling helpless and small, the weight of everything pressing down on me. My phone rang. My mother. I answered. Where are you? I'm at the florist's shop. It's closed. I told you that. I found someone who can do it. A woman in Beaverton. She has availability tomorrow. We need to go meet her this afternoon. Mom, Beaverton is an hour away. So? Do you want flowers or not? I closed my eyes. Fine. I'll meet you there. She texted me the address and hung up. The drive to Beaverton felt endless. My mother was already there when I arrived, standing outside a small shop with a cheerful yellow awning. She waved me over, all smiles again, like the tension from this morning had never happened. This is Greta, she said, gesturing to a woman in her 60s with kind eyes and dirt under her fingernails. She's a miracle worker. Greta shook my hand warmly. I hear we have a bit of a crisis. Let's see what we can do. We spent the next 2 hours going over options. My mother dominated the conversation, steering Greta toward elaborate arrangements, oversized bouquets, cascading centerpieces. Every time I suggested something simpler, my mother would gently redirect. Let's just see all the options, sweetie. Keep an open mind. By the end of the meeting, I had agreed to arrangements I didn't want, in colors I hadn't chosen, at twice the price I'd originally budgeted. Greta seemed lovely, but this wasn't my vision. It was my mother's. Again. On the drive home, I called Daniel. He answered immediately. How did it go? Honestly? I feel like I just got steamrolled. What happened? She took over. Every decision. Every choice. And I just sat there and let it happen. Again. There was a long pause. Then Daniel said quietly, Vanessa, I need to tell you something. I pulled over into a gas station parking lot. What? I did some checking today. Called in a favor with a colleague. What kind of checking? Your florist didn't cancel because of a family emergency. What are you talking about? Someone called her yesterday afternoon. Told her there had been a mistake with the order. That the wedding was cancelled. That she didn't need to fulfill the contract. My hands went cold. Who called her? The florist said it was a woman. Older voice. Very polite. Very convincing. Said she was calling on your behalf. My breath caught in my throat. No. Vanessa. Yes, I said, my voice shaking. It was her. It was my mother. Daniel was quiet for a moment. Then he said, I know. I pulled the phone records. The call came from her cell phone. I sat there in my car, staring at nothing, feeling the world tilt sideways. She sabotaged my wedding. She lied to the florist. She manufactured a crisis so she could swoop in and fix it. So she could control it. So she could make it hers. Daniel, I whispered. What do I do? His voice was steady, calm, the same tone he used when he was working a case. You let me handle it. No. I'm serious, Vanessa. This isn't just manipulation anymore. This is fraud. She impersonated you. She interfered with a legal contract. She committed a crime. My stomach twisted. I can't have my mother arrested 2 days before my wedding. You don't have to, Daniel said. But you do need to confront her. And you need to do it now. Before she does anything else. I drove to my mother's house in a daze. She lived in a gated community on the outskirts of the city, a sprawling 2-story colonial with a manicured lawn and rose bushes lining the driveway. I parked and sat there for a moment, gathering courage. Then I walked up to the front door and rang the bell. She answered quickly, still dressed in the same outfit from earlier, a glass of white wine in her hand. Vanessa, she said brightly. What a nice surprise. Come in. I stepped inside but didn't sit. I stayed standing in the foyer, arms crossed. I know what you did. Her smile faltered. What are you talking about? The florist. You called her. You told her the wedding was cancelled. You sabotaged my vendor so you could replace her with someone you picked. Someone you could control. My mother's expression shifted. The warmth drained from her face. That's absurd. I have the phone records, I said quietly. Daniel pulled them. It was your number. She stared at me for a long moment. Then she set her wine glass down on the hall table, very carefully, very deliberately. Fine. Yes. I called her. Why? Because you were making a mistake, she said, voice rising. That florist was completely wrong for the aesthetic. The arrangements were too simple. Too plain. Too you, apparently. She flinched. That's not what I meant. Then what did you mean, Mom? Because it sounds like you thought my choices weren't good enough. That I wasn't good enough. So you lied. You manipulated. You committed fraud. Don't be so dramatic, she snapped. I was trying to help. By lying? By going behind my back? By destroying something I worked hard to plan? She crossed her arms defensively. You've always been ungrateful. I have spent months planning this wedding. Months. And all you do is fight me on every little detail. I didn't ask you to plan my wedding, I said, my voice breaking. You offered. And then you took over. You made it about you. Every single decision. Every single moment. This was supposed to be my day, and you turned it into your performance. My mother's face hardened. If you didn't want my help, you should have said so. I did say so. 100 times. And you ignored me. Every single time. We stood there in silence, the air between us thick with years of unspoken resentment. Finally, she said coldly, if you feel that way, maybe I shouldn't come to the wedding at all. My heart clenched. That's not what I want. Then what do you want, Vanessa? I want you to let me have this one thing. I want you to stop controlling everything. I want you to just be my mom and be happy for me. Her expression didn't soften. She just picked up her wine glass and walked toward the living room. I think you should leave. I stood there for a moment, staring at her retreating figure, then turned and walked out. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely grip my keys. I sat in my car and called Daniel. I told her I knew. And she admitted it. She said she was trying to help. That I was making a mistake. Then she told me maybe she shouldn't come to the wedding. Jesus, Daniel breathed. What did you say? I said I wanted her to just let me have this. And she walked away. Daniel was quiet for a moment. Then he said, I'm coming over. No. Stay at your place. I need some space to think. Vanessa. I'm okay. I promise. I'll see you tomorrow. We still have the final tasting at the venue. Okay, he said reluctantly. But call me if you need anything. I will. I love you. I love you too. I drove home and sat in my apartment in the dark, replaying the conversation in my head. My mother's face. Her defensiveness. Her refusal to apologize. The way she made herself the victim. Again. Always. I thought about all the times she'd done this before. All the moments she'd rewritten, reframed, redirected. All the ways she'd made my life about her narrative instead of my reality. And for the first time, I felt something shift inside me. Not anger. Not even sadness. Just clarity. Cold, sharp, undeniable clarity. She wasn't going to change. She wasn't going to apologize. She wasn't going to suddenly become the mother I'd spent my whole life hoping for. And I couldn't keep sacrificing my peace, my boundaries, my life, waiting for her to care. I picked up my phone and texted Nicole. Can you come over? Her reply was immediate. On my way. She arrived 20 minutes later with a bottle of wine and a bag of takeout. We sat on my living room floor, eating cold noodles and talking until midnight. I told her everything. The florist. The confrontation. The phone records. Daniel's investigation. My mother's admission. Nicole listened without interrupting, her face growing darker with every detail. When I finished, she set down her chopsticks and said quietly, "Nessa, you know this isn't normal, right?" "I know. Like, this is genuinely unhinged behavior." "I know." She reached over and squeezed my hand. "What do you want to do?" "I don't know." "Do you want her at the wedding?" I thought about it. Really thought about it. Part of me wanted to say yes. Wanted to believe that maybe, somehow, she'd show up and be the mother I needed. But the larger, louder part of me knew better. "No," I said finally. "I don't think I do." "Then don't invite her." "It's that simple." "It's not simple," I said. "She's my mother." "So what?" "She sabotaged your wedding. She lied. She manipulated you. She made you feel small and ungrateful for having boundaries. That's not love, Nessa. That's control." I felt tears prick my eyes. What if I regret it? What if years from now I look back and wish I'd handled this differently? Nicole leaned forward, her voice firm. Or what if years from now you look back and realize this was the moment you finally chose yourself? We sat in silence for a long time after that. Finally, I picked up my phone and drafted a message to my mother. I read it out loud to Nicole. "Mom, after a lot of thought, I've decided it's best if you don't attend the wedding. What you did crossed a line I can't ignore. I need space. I hope you can respect that." Nicole nodded slowly. "That's good. That's clear." I stared at the message for another 5 minutes before hitting send. The response came almost immediately. "You're making a huge mistake. You'll regret this." I turned my phone face down and didn't reply. Nicole stayed with me until almost 2 in the morning. When she finally left, I crawled into bed and lay there staring at the ceiling, feeling hollow and relieved and terrified all at once. Tomorrow was the final walk through. Tomorrow, I'd have to tell Daniel what I'd decided. Tomorrow, I'd have to face the reality of getting married without my mother there. But tonight, for the first time in a long time, I felt like I could breathe. The morning light filtered through the blinds in slats of pale gold, cutting across the hardwood floor in sharp lines. I woke up with my phone clutched in my hand, the screen dark and silent. No new messages. No calls. Just the weight of yesterday's decision sitting heavy in my chest like a stone I'd swallowed whole. Daniel was already awake when I shuffled into the kitchen. He stood by the counter in his running shorts and a faded bureau t-shirt, pouring coffee into 2 mugs. He didn't say anything when he handed me one, just kissed my forehead and waited. That was Daniel. Patient. Present. Never pushing me to speak before I was ready. "I sent the text," I said finally, wrapping both hands around the warm ceramic. She replied almost immediately. "Told me I'd regret it." He nodded slowly, leaning back against the counter. "How do you feel?" "Honestly? Like I just stepped off a cliff and I'm still waiting to hit the ground." He reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind my ear. "You did the right thing." "I hope so." "You did," he said firmly. What she did wasn't just controlling. It was calculated. It was deliberate. And if she's willing to sabotage your flowers, what else is she willing to do? The question hung between us, uncomfortable and unavoidable. I sipped my coffee and tried not to think about it. "We have the final tasting today," I said, changing the subject. 2 o'clock. He nodded. "I'll be there. And tonight, I'm taking you somewhere quiet. No wedding talk. No family drama. Just us." I managed a small smile. "That sounds perfect." The venue looked different in daylight. Less romantic, more practical. The coordinator, Kelly, met us in the lobby with her ever-present clipboard and that same efficient energy. She walked us through the timeline one more time, confirming arrival times, music cues, processional order. Everything was set. Everything was planned. Everything except the gaping hole where my mother was supposed to be. The tasting was held in a small private room off the main kitchen. The chef, a soft-spoken man named Terrence, had prepared 6 courses for us to sample. Seared scallops with citrus butter. Herb-crusted lamb. Roasted vegetable medley. Vanilla panna cotta with fresh berries. Each dish was plated beautifully, presented with care. Daniel ate with genuine appreciation, making notes about flavor profiles and portion sizes. I pushed food around my plate and tried to focus. Halfway through the tasting, my phone buzzed. I glanced at the screen. Melanie. I hesitated, then silenced it. It buzzed again 30 seconds later. Then again. Daniel looked at me across the table. You should answer it. It's Melanie. She's probably calling on Mom's behalf. Maybe. But you won't know unless you pick up. I excused myself and stepped into the hallway. The corridor was lined with framed photos of past weddings, smiling couples frozen in their happiest moments. I answered on the 4th ring. Hey. Nessa, Melanie's voice came through tight and strained. What the hell is going on? I'm guessing Mom called you. She's hysterical. She said you uninvited her from the wedding. Is that true? Yes. It's true. Are you insane? She's your mother. She sabotaged my florist, I said evenly. She lied to a vendor, impersonated me, and manufactured a crisis so she could control my wedding. That's not helping, Nessa. That's not being a good daughter. That's fraud, Melanie. That's a literal crime. There was a long pause. Then Melanie said quietly, You're overreacting. She was just trying to help. By lying? By going behind my back? How is that helping? She wanted your day to be perfect. She wanted my day to be hers, I corrected. There's a difference. Melanie sighed, the sound crackling through the speaker. Look, I know Mom can be intense. But uninviting her 2 days before your wedding? That's cruel. You know what's cruel? I said, my voice rising. Spending your entire childhood being told you're too sensitive. Too dramatic. Too much. Being corrected in front of strangers. Having your accomplishments downplayed and your mistakes magnified. Being erased from family photos because you didn't smile right or stand in the right place. Melanie was silent. I kept going. Remember when I graduated summa cum laude and Mom told me not to mention it at Thanksgiving because it would make you feel bad? Or when I got promoted and she said I should be careful about bragging because people don't like women who are too ambitious? Or when I told her I was engaged and the first thing she said was that she hoped I'd lose weight before the wedding? Still silence. When Melanie finally spoke, her voice was smaller. I didn't know she said that. Because you were the one she praised. You were the easy daughter. The one who didn't ask questions or set boundaries or challenge her. I was the problem. Always. And I'm done apologizing for it. I heard Melanie take a shaky breath. Nessa, I'm sorry. I didn't realize it was that bad. It was. It is. And I can't keep pretending it's normal just to keep the peace. There was a long pause. Then Melanie said quietly, Do you want me to still come? To the wedding? Of course I do. You're my sister. I'm not mad at you. I'm just done letting Mom control my life. Okay, Melanie said softly. Okay. I'll be there. Thank you. And Nessa? Yeah? I'm really sorry. I should have seen it sooner. We hung up and I stood there in the hallway for a moment, feeling wrung out and fragile. When I returned to the tasting room, Daniel took one look at my face and stood up. We're done here, he said to Kelly. Everything looks perfect. Thank you. Kelly smiled and nodded, gathering her notes. I'll see you both tomorrow evening for setup. Daniel drove us to a small park by the river. We walked along the water in silence, his hand warm and steady in mine. The afternoon sun glinted off the surface in bright shards of light. Families spread out on picnic blankets. Joggers passed us in steady rhythms. Everything felt startlingly normal, like the world hadn't just shifted beneath my feet. You okay? Daniel asked after a while. I don't know. I feel like I should be relieved. But mostly I just feel sad. That makes sense. I keep waiting for her to apologize. To call and say she understands. That she's sorry. That she'll respect my boundaries. But she won't, will she? Daniel squeezed my hand. Probably not. People like your mom don't apologize. They double down. When I finished, she sighed deeply. Oh, honey. I'm so sorry. You don't think I'm overreacting? Overreacting? No. If anything, you're underreacting. What your mother did was unconscionable. I felt tears prick my eyes. I keep thinking maybe I should have handled it differently. Maybe I should have just let it go. Absolutely not, Lorraine said firmly. You set a boundary. A reasonable, necessary boundary. And she crossed it. That's on her, not you. But she's my mom. And you're her daughter. She should be treating you with respect and love. Not manipulation and control. I wiped my eyes with the back of my hand. I'm scared I'm going to regret this. That years from now I'll wish I'd just sucked it up and let her come. Or years from now you'll realize this was the moment you stopped letting her treat you like you don't matter. You deserve better than this, Nessa. You always have. We talked for another hour. Lorraine told me stories about my mother's childhood, about the way my grandmother had controlled and criticized her, about the patterns that get passed down through generations when people don't heal. It doesn't excuse her behavior, Lorraine said. But it might help you understand it. And maybe, eventually, let go of some of the guilt. I don't know if I can let go of the guilt. You will. It takes time. But you will. And Nessa? Yeah? I'm so proud of you. For what? For choosing yourself. For setting boundaries. For refusing to shrink anymore. That takes more courage than most people ever find. After we hung up, I sat on my couch with a cup of tea and let myself cry. Not sad tears exactly. More like release. Like something I'd been holding onto for decades was finally loosening its grip. Daniel came over around 9 with takeout and a deck of cards. We ate on the floor and played gin rummy until midnight, not talking about the wedding or my mother or anything heavy. Just laughing and trash talking each other's card skills and being normal. Being us. The next morning, the day before the wedding, I woke up to a text from Nicole. Getting my nails done at 11. Want to come? I texted back immediately. Yes, please. We met at a small salon downtown that smelled like lavender and acetone. Nicole had already claimed a pedicure chair when I arrived. She patted the seat next to her. Get in here. We spent 2 hours getting pampered, our feet soaking in warm water while technicians painted our nails in careful strokes. Nicole chose a deep burgundy. I went with a soft blush pink. Classy, Nicole said approvingly. Very bridal. How are you feeling? She asked after a while. Surprisingly okay. I thought I'd be a mess today. But mostly I just feel ready. Good. That's good. She hesitated, then added, Your mom hasn't tried to contact you again? Not since the text. Melanie called yesterday, but it was actually okay. We talked. Really talked. She apologized. Nicole raised her eyebrows. Wow. Character development. I laughed. Yeah. Maybe. We'll see if it sticks. Even if it doesn't, at least you know where you stand. Exactly. After our nails dried, we went to lunch at a small cafe near the salon. Nicole ordered a salad. I got a grilled cheese and tomato soup, comfort food that reminded me of college study sessions and late-night conversations. We sat by the window, watching people pass by on the sidewalk, and for a little while everything felt light and easy. Tomorrow's the big day, Nicole said, grinning. How does it feel? Surreal. Like it's happening to someone else. It's happening to you. And it's going to be beautiful. Even without your mom there. Especially without her there, Nicole said pointedly. No one's going to criticize your flowers or rearrange the seating chart or make passive-aggressive comments about your dress. I hadn't thought about it that way. You're right. Tomorrow gets to be about you and Daniel. About your love. About the life you're building together. Not about managing someone else's expectations or walking on eggshells. I felt something shift in my chest. Relief, maybe. Or possibility. Yeah, I said softly. Yeah, you're right. Nicole reached across the table and squeezed my hand. You're going to be okay, Nessa. Better than okay. You're going to be free. That afternoon, I drove to the venue for final setup. The florist from Beaverton, Greta, had done a beautiful job despite my mother's interference. The arrangements weren't what I'd originally chosen, but they were lovely in their own way. Soft whites and creams with touches of greenery. Elegant. Understated. Kelly walked me through the final details. Seating chart, check. Music playlist, check. Photographer and videographer confirmed, check. Everything was falling into place. As I stood in the empty ballroom, looking at the space that would soon be filled with people I loved, I felt a wave of gratitude wash over me. This was happening. Despite everything, it was actually happening. My phone buzzed. Daniel. Can't wait to marry you tomorrow. I smiled and typed back. Can't wait to marry you either. His next message came quickly. I mean it, Vanessa. Whatever happens tomorrow, whatever surprises come up, we're in this together. Always. I stared at that word. Always. It felt solid. Real. Like something I could hold on to. That night, I stayed at Nicole's apartment. Pre-wedding tradition, she'd insisted. No seeing the groom the night before. We ordered pizza, drank wine, and watched romantic comedies until we both fell asleep on her couch, still in our clothes. When I woke up the next morning, sunlight was streaming through her windows and my phone was buzzing with messages. Melanie checking in. Aunt Lorraine sending encouragement. Daniel's mother asking if I needed anything. But nothing from my mother. The absence felt enormous and surprisingly freeing at the same time. Nicole made coffee and we sat on her balcony in our pajamas, watching the city wake up below us. You ready? She asked. I think so. You think so or you know so? I smiled. I know so. Good. Because today, you're getting everything you deserve. Everything you've always deserved. And no one's going to take that away from you. Not anymore. We spent the morning getting ready slowly, carefully. Hair. Makeup. The dress. Each step felt ceremonial, important. When I finally looked at myself in the mirror, fully dressed and ready, I barely recognized the woman staring back. She looked confident. Certain. Beautiful. Like someone who knew her worth. Nicole stood behind me, her hands on my shoulders. Look at you, she whispered. I'm looking. That's the woman who chose herself. That's the woman who set boundaries. That's the woman who's about to marry the love of her life on her own terms. I felt tears well up but blinked them back, careful not to ruin my makeup. Thank you. For what? For being my family when my family couldn't be. The car arrived at 2 o'clock to take us to the venue. The Riverside Estate looked magical in the late afternoon light. Guests were already arriving, dressed in their finest, smiling and chatting. I watched from the bridal suite window as Daniel's parents greeted people at the entrance. As Aunt Lorraine arrived with Uncle Greg. As Melanie pulled up in her car, looking nervous and beautiful in her bridesmaid dress. Everyone I loved was here. Everyone who mattered. And the one person who tried to make this day about herself was nowhere to be seen. And I was okay with that. More than okay. I was free. The ceremony was scheduled to begin at 4:30. At 4:15, Kelly knocked softly on the bridal suite door. Everyone's seated. The string quartet is ready. Daniel's in position. Are we good to go? I looked at Nicole, then at Melanie, then back at my reflection one last time. We're good. The walk from the suite to the ceremony entrance felt both endless and instantaneous. My heart hammered against my ribs, not from fear but from anticipation. The double doors stood closed in front of me, and beyond them I could hear the gentle murmur of guests settling into their seats, the soft melody of violins tuning. Nicole went first, her burgundy dress catching the light as she stepped through. Then Melanie, who turned back to give me an encouraging smile before disappearing through the doorway. Then it was just me and my Uncle Greg, who'd agreed to walk me down the aisle when I'd explained the situation with my mother. He offered his arm and I took it, grateful for something steady to hold on to. Ready? He asked quietly. As I'll ever be. The doors opened. The music shifted. Every head turned. I saw Daniel immediately, standing at the altar in his navy suit, his face breaking into the widest smile I'd ever seen. Everything else blurred. The flowers, the guests, the photographer crouching in the aisle. All of it faded except for him, standing there waiting for me like he'd been waiting his whole life. Uncle Greg walked me slowly, steadily, his hand warm over mine. When we reached the front, he kissed my cheek and whispered, "Your father would be so proud." Then he placed my hand in Daniel's and stepped back. The officiant, a calm woman named Reverend Shaw, welcomed everyone and began the ceremony. She spoke about love as a choice, about partnership as a practice, about building a life together through intention and care. Daniel and I had written our own vows. When it came time for him to speak, he pulled a folded piece of paper from his jacket pocket, then looked at me and put it away. "I don't need notes for this," he said. His voice was steady, clear. "Vanessa, the first time I met you, you were arguing with a parking attendant about a ticket you swore you didn't deserve. You were fierce and funny and completely unaware of how remarkable you were. That hasn't changed." A few people laughed softly. Daniel squeezed my hands. "You've taught me what it means to be brave. Not the kind of bravery that looks impressive from the outside, but the quiet kind. The kind that sets boundaries even when it's painful. The kind that chooses truth over comfort. The kind that refuses to shrink just to make others comfortable. I promise to see you. Always. To hear you. To make space for you exactly as you are. To build a home with you where you never have to wonder if you belong. Because you do. You always will." My throat felt tight. I blinked hard, trying not to cry. When it was my turn, I took a breath and looked into his eyes. "Daniel, I spent most of my life believing I had to earn love. That it was something conditional, something I could lose if I wasn't careful enough or quiet enough or agreeable enough. You showed me that wasn't true. You showed me that love doesn't ask me to be smaller. It asks me to be myself. I promise to choose us. Every day. Even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. I promise to trust you, to lean on you, to let you see all the parts of me I used to hide. And I promise to build a life with you that feels like freedom. Like home. Like finally being enough exactly as I am." Reverend Shaw smiled. "By the power vested in me, I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss." Daniel pulled me close and kissed me, and the room erupted in applause and cheers. When we broke apart, he was grinning. "Hi, wife. Hi, husband." We walked back down the aisle together, hands clasped, smiling so hard my face hurt. The reception unfolded in a warm blur. Dinner was served. Toasts were made. Nicole gave a speech that was equal parts hilarious and heartfelt, recounting stories from our college days that made everyone laugh. Melanie spoke too, her voice wavering slightly as she talked about sisterhood and second chances. Then Aunt Lorraine stood up. She hadn't told me she was planning to speak. She held her champagne glass and looked around the room with the kind of authority that made everyone go quiet. "I've known Vanessa since she was born," she began. "I watched her grow up in the shadow of expectations that were never fair and often cruel. I watched her try to earn love that should have been freely given. I watched her shrink herself to fit into spaces that were never meant to hold her." The room was completely silent now. "But today," Lorraine continued, "I'm watching her step fully into herself. Into a life she chose. Into a partnership built on mutual respect and genuine care. And I couldn't be prouder." She raised her glass higher. "To Vanessa and Daniel. May your marriage be everything you deserve. May you never doubt your worth. And may you always, always choose each other." The room erupted in applause. I caught Lorraine's eye across the tables and mouthed thank you. She winked. Daniel and I had our first dance to an old jazz standard, swaying together under the twinkling lights strung across the ceiling. "This is perfect," I whispered against his shoulder. "It really is," he agreed. "No drama. No surprises. Just us." I smiled and let myself relax into him, into the moment, into the quiet joy of it all. The reception continued with dancing and laughter and the kind of easy warmth that comes when people genuinely care about each other. Daniel's college friends taught me a complicated line dance that I absolutely butchered. Nicole caught the bouquet and immediately tried to hand it to a very flustered groomsman. Everything felt light. Uncomplicated. Right. Around 8:30, I stepped outside onto the terrace for some air. The river stretched out dark and glittering under the evening sky. I could still hear the music from inside, muffled and distant. I closed my eyes and breathed in the cool night air, feeling grateful and grounded and whole. I heard footsteps behind me and turned, expecting Daniel. Instead, I saw my mother. She stood at the edge of the terrace in an elegant cream dress, her hair perfectly styled, her makeup flawless. She looked like she'd been invited. Like she belonged. My stomach dropped. "What are you doing here?" I asked, my voice coming out sharper than I intended. She held up both hands in a placating gesture. "I'm not here to cause trouble." "Then why are you here?" "Because you're my daughter. And this is your wedding. I uninvited you." "I know. And I'm here anyway. Because I love you. And because I think we can work through this." My chest tightened. "You can't just show up after everything that happened. After what you did." "I made a mistake," she said, stepping closer. "I was trying to help and I went about it the wrong way. I see that now." "Do you?" I said, my voice shaking. "Do you really see it? Or are you just saying what you think I want to hear so you can come inside and pretend everything's fine?" Her expression hardened slightly. "I don't know what you want me to say, Vanessa." I apologized. I admitted I was wrong. "What more do you want?" "I want you to mean it. I want you to understand why what you did was hurtful. I want you to respect my boundaries instead of bulldozing over them every single time." She sighed, the sound heavy with frustration. "You've always been so sensitive. So dramatic. Always making everything into a bigger deal than it needs to be. And there it is," I said quietly. "There what is?" "The reason I can't do this anymore. You can't even apologize without making it my fault. Without implying that I'm the problem for having feelings. I'm not saying you're the problem. You just did. You just called me sensitive and dramatic for being hurt by your behavior. That's not an apology. That's blame." My mother's jaw tightened. "Fine. You want me to grovel? Is that it?" I want you to leave. Her eyes flashed. You don't mean that. I do. You came here uninvited. You disrespected my boundaries. Again. And now you're standing here trying to manipulate me into letting you stay. I'm not doing it. Not today. Not ever. She stared at me for a long moment, her expression cycling through shock, anger, and something that might have been hurt. Then she composed herself, smoothing down her dress with shaking hands. You're going to regret this, she said coldly. Years from now, when you look back, you're going to realize you threw away your family over nothing. Over flowers. This isn't about flowers, I said. It's about control. It's about respect. It's about the fact that you've never seen me as a whole person with my own needs and feelings. I've only ever been a reflection of you. A supporting character in your story. And I'm done with that. I'm done shrinking. I'm done apologizing for taking up space. I'm done trying to earn love that should have been mine from the start. My mother's face went pale. Then she straightened her shoulders and turned toward the door. Fine. Have it your way. But don't come crying to me when this all falls apart. She walked back inside, her heels clicking sharply against the stone. I stood there trembling, my hands clenched into fists. I wanted to scream. I wanted to cry. I wanted to throw something. Instead, I just stood there, breathing hard, trying to steady myself. Daniel appeared in the doorway seconds later. He must have seen her leave. He crossed the terrace quickly and pulled me into his arms. I saw her, he said quietly. Are you okay? I nodded against his chest. She showed up uninvited. Tried to guilt me into letting her stay. I told her to leave. Good. I'm sorry you had to deal with that tonight. Me too. But I did it. I held the boundary. He pulled back to look at me. I'm so proud of you. I felt the tension start to ease from my shoulders. Can we go back inside? Forget this happened? Enjoy our wedding? Absolutely. We walked back into the reception together. The music was still playing. People were still dancing. No one seemed to have noticed the drama that had just unfolded outside. Nicole caught my eye from across the room and raised her eyebrows in question. I shook my head slightly and mouthed later. She nodded and went back to dancing with one of Daniel's cousins. The rest of the evening passed without incident. We cut the cake. We danced with family members. We posed for what felt like 1,000 photos. And slowly, the encounter with my mother faded into background noise. Around 11, we said our goodbyes and left in a shower of sparklers and well wishes. Daniel's friend had decorated his car with streamers and a just married sign. We drove to a hotel downtown where we'd booked the honeymoon suite. The room was beautiful. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. A king-sized bed with soft white linens. A bottle of champagne chilling in an ice bucket. We kicked off our shoes and collapsed onto the couch, still in our wedding clothes, exhausted and happy. That was incredible, Daniel said, pulling me close. It really was. Even with the surprise appearance? Even with that. Because I didn't let her ruin it. He kissed the top of my head. No, you didn't. You handled it perfectly. I'm not sure about perfectly. But I handled it. And that's enough. We stayed up talking until almost 2 in the morning, reliving moments from the day, laughing about Nicole's toast and his father's terrible dance moves. Eventually we changed out of our wedding clothes and fell into bed, exhausted but content. The next morning, we slept late and ordered room service. Pancakes and bacon and fresh squeezed orange juice. We ate in bed and watched terrible morning television and didn't talk about anything important. It was perfect. Around noon, my phone buzzed with a text from Melanie. Last night was beautiful. I'm so happy for you. Thank you for letting me be part of it. I smiled and showed Daniel. She's really trying. That's good. Yeah. It is. Another text came through. This one from Aunt Lorraine. How are you feeling today, sweetheart? I typed back. Happy. Relieved. Ready to start this next chapter. Her response was immediate. That's exactly what I wanted to hear. Enjoy your honeymoon. You've earned it. We spent the rest of the day wandering around the city, holding hands, window shopping, stopping for coffee and pastries. Everything felt new and exciting, like we were seeing the world through fresh eyes. That evening, we had dinner at a small Italian restaurant Daniel had found online. Candlelight and red wine and pasta that melted in your mouth. Halfway through the meal, Daniel's phone rang. He glanced at the screen and frowned. It's my partner from work. I should take this. Go ahead. He stepped outside. I watched through the window as he paced back and forth, his expression serious. When he came back in, he looked troubled. What's wrong? I asked. That was Mike. He's been doing some follow-up on your mother's interference with the florist. Follow-up? What kind of follow-up? Daniel sat down and took my hand. The florist filed a formal complaint. About being deceived. About the impact it had on her business and reputation. And the federal prosecutor's office is looking into it. Wire fraud. Identity theft. Potentially other charges. My stomach dropped. Wait. Are you saying my mother could be charged? Criminally charged? It's possible. What she did meets the legal definition. She impersonated you. She interfered with a business transaction. She used deception to manipulate a vendor. Those are serious offenses. I felt the room tilt slightly. I didn't want this. I just wanted her to leave me alone. I know. And you're not the one pressing charges. The florist is. This is out of your hands now. But she's my mother. She's also someone who committed a crime. And there are consequences for that. I sat back, trying to process. Part of me felt vindicated. She'd finally gone too far and someone was holding her accountable. But another part, the part that still remembered being 7 years old and wanting her approval, felt guilty and sad and scared. What happens now? I asked. There'll be an investigation. They'll interview witnesses, gather evidence, build a case. If they have enough, they'll file charges. She'll have the opportunity to defend herself. And if she's found guilty, she could face fines. Probation. Possibly jail time, depending on the severity and her criminal history. I felt tears prick my eyes. This is so much bigger than I thought it would be. Daniel squeezed my hand. You didn't cause this. She did. I know. But it doesn't make it easier. No. It doesn't. We finished dinner in relative silence, both of us processing what this meant. On the walk back to the hotel, I called Aunt Lorraine. She answered immediately. Nessa, what's wrong? I told her about the investigation, the potential charges, the whole mess. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment. How do you feel about it? She asked finally. Honestly? Conflicted. Part of me thinks she deserves consequences. But part of me just feels sad. Both of those things can be true, Lorraine said gently. You can believe someone should be held accountable and still grieve the relationship you wish you'd had. I guess. And Nessa? This isn't your fault. You set a boundary. She chose to cross it. What happens now is a result of her choices, not yours. I know that logically. But emotionally it's harder. Give yourself time. Let yourself feel whatever you need to feel. And remember, you have people who love you. People who support you. You're not alone in this. Thank you. I needed to hear that. Anytime, sweetheart. Now go enjoy the rest of your evening with your husband. Try not to let this overshadow your happiness." We hung up and I leaned into Daniel. "She's right. I'm trying not to let this ruin things." "It won't," he said firmly. "Whatever happens with your mother, it doesn't change what we have. It doesn't change the life we're building." We spent the rest of the evening watching a movie in the hotel room, curled up together under a blanket. I tried to focus on the screen, on Daniel's warmth beside me, on the fact that I'd just married my best friend. But my mind kept drifting to my mother. To what she must be feeling. To what would happen next. The investigation moved quickly. Within a week, the prosecutor's office contacted me for a statement. I met with a young attorney named Rachel who asked careful, detailed questions about my mother's behavior, the timeline of events, the impact it had on my wedding planning. I answered honestly, even though every word felt like a betrayal. When we finished, Rachel thanked me and said they'd be in touch if they needed anything else. I walked out of that office feeling hollowed out and heavy. Daniel was waiting in the lobby. "How did it go?" I told them everything. "How are you holding up?" "I don't know. I feel like I'm watching someone else's life fall apart and I'm somehow responsible even though I know I'm not." "You're not responsible," he said firmly. "She made her choices. You just refuse to be complicit in the dysfunction." I nodded, but the guilt sat heavy in my chest anyway. We went home and I tried to focus on normal things. Unpacking from the honeymoon. Going back to work. Starting our married life. But the investigation hung over everything like a storm cloud. 2 weeks later, formal charges were filed. Wire fraud. Identity theft. My mother was arrested, processed, and released on bail. The story made local news. Small business owner files charges against mother of the bride for wedding sabotage. The headline felt surreal. Invasive. Like my private pain had been turned into entertainment. Melanie called me crying. "I can't believe this is happening. I can't believe she actually did this." I didn't know what to say. Neither did I. "Are you okay?" she asked. "Are you?" "We're both a mess," she said with a bitter laugh. "Yeah. We are." The trial was set for 3 months out. In the meantime, my mother hired an expensive defense attorney who immediately began a media campaign painting her as a concerned mother who'd made a mistake in judgment. Who was being unfairly persecuted for trying to help her daughter's wedding be perfect. It made me sick. The narrative she was spinning bore no resemblance to reality. But it was effective. Public opinion was split. Some people thought she should be held accountable. Others thought the charges were excessive, that this was a family matter that should have been resolved privately. I stopped reading the comments. Stopped checking social media. Focused on my life with Daniel, on our little apartment, on building something stable and safe. Nicole came over most weekends. We'd cook dinner and watch movies and pretend the world outside wasn't falling apart. "You're stronger than you think," she told me one night. "I don't feel strong." "You are. You set a boundary and you held it. Even when it got hard. Even when there were consequences you didn't anticipate. That's strength." I wanted to believe her. Some days I did. Other days I just felt tired and guilty and sad. The day of the trial arrived cold and gray. Daniel and I drove to the courthouse in silence. Reporters were camped outside, cameras ready. We pushed through them without comment and found seats in the back of the courtroom. My mother sat at the defense table in a conservative navy suit, her hair pulled back, her expression carefully neutral. She didn't look at me. Not once. The prosecutor laid out the case methodically. Phone records. Testimony from the florist. Evidence of deception and fraud. My mother's attorney argued it was a misunderstanding. An overzealous mother who made a poor decision but had no criminal intent. The jury deliberated for 2 days. When they came back, the verdict was guilty on both counts. My mother's face crumbled. Her attorney put a hand on her shoulder. The judge scheduled sentencing for the following month. Daniel and I left through a side exit to avoid the press. We sat in the car for a long time, neither of us speaking. Finally, I said quietly, I thought I'd feel relieved. And? I just feel empty. He took my hand. That's normal. This isn't the outcome anyone wanted. No. But maybe it's the one we needed. Maybe she'll finally understand that actions have consequences. Maybe. Or maybe she'll just blame me forever. Probably both, he said honestly. People like your mother don't change easily. If at all. Sentencing came a month later. The judge gave her 2 years probation, 200 hours of community service, and a hefty fine. No jail time, but a permanent criminal record. My mother stood stone-faced as the judge read the sentence, then was led away by her attorney. I watched her go, feeling a strange mix of relief and sorrow. This chapter was finally closing. But the scars it left would take much longer to heal. 6 months passed like water moving over stones, slowly reshaping the landscape of my life. Daniel and I settled into married life with surprising ease. We developed routines. Saturday morning farmers market runs. Tuesday night cooking experiments that sometimes succeeded and often didn't. Sunday evenings curled up on the couch with books and tea. Simple things that felt profoundly meaningful after years of chaos. Work became a refuge. I'd been promoted 3 months after the wedding, taking on a team lead position that required more responsibility but also gave me more autonomy. My boss, a straightforward woman named Karen, had pulled me aside after the promotion was announced. You've earned this, she'd said. Not because of sympathy or circumstances. Because you're excellent at what you do. Don't let anyone make you doubt that. I'd needed to hear it more than I realized. The scars from the trial were still there, tender and easily aggravated. Some days I'd see a woman who looked like my mother from behind and my chest would tighten. Other days I'd catch myself second-guessing decisions, hearing her voice in my head telling me I was being too sensitive, too difficult, too much. But those moments were becoming less frequent. The space between them growing wider. Melanie and I talked every few weeks. Our relationship was cautious, tentative, like we were learning each other all over again without our mother as the interpreter between us. She'd started therapy after the trial, working through her own complicated feelings about our childhood and the role she'd played in the family dynamics. I never meant to be the golden child, she'd told me during one particularly honest conversation. I didn't ask for that. But I also didn't question it. And I'm sorry for that. Her apology hadn't fixed everything, but it had opened a door. Aunt Lorraine became a regular fixture in our lives. She'd come over for dinner once a month, bringing wine and stories and the kind of unconditional support I'd always craved. She never brought up my mother unless I did first, which I appreciated. When I was ready to talk about it, she listened. When I needed distraction, she provided it. She was exactly the family I'd needed all along. One evening in late autumn, Daniel came home from work looking troubled. I was in the kitchen chopping vegetables for stir-fry when he walked in and set his badge and gun on the counter with more force than necessary. Bad day? I asked. He loosened his tie and leaned against the counter. Your mother's probation officer called me today. My knife stilled against the cutting board. Why? She listed me as a character reference on some paperwork. Without asking. Of course she did. The officer wanted to verify our relationship. Asked some questions about her behavior, her rehabilitation efforts, whether she'd attempted to contact you. I set the knife down and turned to face him. What did you tell him? The truth. That she hasn't contacted you directly. That as far as I know she's completed her community service. That I have no insight into whether she's actually changed because we have no relationship with her. How did he take that? Professionally. He thanked me for my time and hung up. Daniel ran a hand through his hair. I just thought you should know. In case she tries to use this as an opening to reach out. Thank you for telling me. Are you okay? Honestly? I don't know. part of me hoped she'd just fade into the background. That we could move on without having to actively manage her presence in our lives. We can, Daniel said. Just because her probation officer called doesn't mean you owe her anything. You can keep the boundaries exactly where they are. I know. It just feels like she's always there, hovering at the edges. Waiting for an opportunity to push back in. Then we stay vigilant. We keep the boundaries clear. And we keep building our life without her in it. I nodded and went back to chopping vegetables, but my hands were shaking slightly. Daniel noticed and came up behind me, wrapping his arms around my waist and resting his chin on my shoulder. "We're okay," he said quietly. "We're going to stay okay." 2 weeks later, a letter arrived. Cream-colored envelope, my name and address written in my mother's distinctive sloping handwriting. No return address. I stared at it for a full minute before opening it. Inside was a single sheet of paper, folded precisely. The letter was short. "Vanessa, I've been doing a lot of thinking over these past months. The trial was a wake-up call. I recognize now that I crossed boundaries I shouldn't have crossed. I'm working with a therapist to understand why I behaved the way I did. I'm not asking for forgiveness or reconciliation. I'm just asking you to know that I'm trying to be better. I hope you're happy. I hope your marriage is everything you wanted it to be. Mom." I read it 3 times, looking for the manipulation, the guilt trip, the hidden agenda. But it seemed genuine. Almost vulnerable. I showed it to Daniel when he got home. "What do you think?" I asked. "I think it's a start," he said carefully. "But words are easy. Actions are what matter. So I don't respond?" "That's up to you. But if you do respond, make sure it's for you. Not because you feel obligated. Not because you're hoping she'll finally become the mother you deserved. But because you genuinely want to." I folded the letter and put it in a drawer. I need time to think about it. That night I called Aunt Lorraine. I read her the letter over the phone. She was quiet for a moment after I finished. "What does your gut tell you?" she asked. "My gut says she means it. But my gut has been wrong about her before." "Fair. So what do you want to do?" "I don't know. I want to believe people can change. But I also don't want to open a door that I worked so hard to close." "Then don't," Lorraine said simply. "You can acknowledge the letter without responding. You can hold space for the possibility that she's changing without letting her back into your life. You don't owe her access just because she wrote some nice words." I sat with that for a few days. Finally, I drafted a response. Short. Neutral. Boundaried. "Mom, I received your letter. I appreciate you acknowledging the harm that was caused. I'm not ready for contact right now, and I don't know if or when I will be. I wish you well in your therapy and your growth. Vanessa." I read it to Daniel before sending. He nodded. "That's good. That's clear." I sent it before I could second-guess myself. Her response came a week later. Another short note. "I understand. Thank you for responding at all. Take all the time you need." And that was it. No pushback. No guilt. No manipulation. Just acceptance. It felt strange and unfamiliar and cautiously hopeful. Maybe she really was trying. Or maybe this was just a different strategy. Either way, I'd said what I needed to say and held my boundary. That was enough. Winter came cold and bright. Daniel and I hosted our first Thanksgiving as a married couple. Nicole came with her new girlfriend, an architect named Sam who made everyone laugh with stories about disastrous client meetings. Melanie came alone, looking nervous but determined to be present. Aunt Lorraine and Uncle Greg brought homemade pies and warmth. Daniel's parents drove in from Seattle, his mother immediately taking over the kitchen in the best possible way. It was chaotic and loud and full of love. The kind of gathering I'd always imagined but never experienced growing up. As I looked around the table at dessert, watching everyone talk and laugh and exist comfortably in each other's space, I felt something shift inside me. Gratitude, maybe. Or peace. Or just the simple recognition that I'd built something good. Something real. Something mine. Daniel caught my eye across the table and smiled. I smiled back, feeling tears prick my eyes for reasons I couldn't fully articulate. Later, after everyone had gone home and we were loading the dishwasher together, he asked what I'd been thinking about during dessert. I was thinking that this is what family is supposed to feel like, I said. Safe. Easy. Like you can be yourself without constantly monitoring your words or managing someone else's emotions. He dried his hands and pulled me close. You deserve this. You've always deserved this. I know. I'm starting to really believe that. Christmas came and went quietly. Daniel and I spent it alone by choice, sleeping late and watching movies in our pajamas and eating takeout Chinese food. It was perfect. New Year's Eve we went to Nicole's party, dancing in her cramped living room with 20 other people, counting down to midnight surrounded by friends who'd chosen us as much as we'd chosen them. When the clock struck 12, Daniel kissed me and whispered, "Best year yet." I laughed against his lips. It's only been 12 seconds. Best year yet, he repeated firmly. In January, I started therapy. I'd been resistant for years, convinced I could handle everything on my own. But after the trial, after the letters, after everything, I realized I needed help processing. My therapist, Dr. Chen, was a calm woman in her 50s with kind eyes and a no-nonsense approach. She didn't let me minimize or deflect. She asked hard questions and sat with me in the uncomfortable answers. It was exhausting and necessary and slowly, incrementally healing. One session, about 2 months in, Dr. Chen asked me what I'd learned about myself through all of this. I thought for a long time before answering. I learned that setting boundaries doesn't make me a bad person. That choosing myself isn't selfish. That I don't have to earn love or prove my worth. That I'm allowed to take up space. She nodded. And how does it feel to know those things? Scary, I admitted. But also freeing. Like I've been carrying something heavy my whole life and I'm finally learning to put it down. Spring arrived wet and green. Daniel and I started talking about buying a house, looking at listings online and attending open houses on weekends. Nothing felt quite right until we stumbled on a small craftsman bungalow in a quiet neighborhood. It had hardwood floors and built-in bookshelves and a backyard with an overgrown garden that I could already imagine taming. We put in an offer that same day. When it was accepted, we celebrated with cheap champagne and takeout pizza, sitting on the floor of our apartment already mentally arranging furniture in rooms we didn't yet own. The closing was scheduled for early May. 2 weeks before, I got a voicemail from an unknown number. I almost deleted it without listening, but something made me press play. Vanessa, this is your mother. I know we haven't spoken. I know you need space. But I wanted you to know that I completed my probation early. Good behavior. And my therapist suggested I reach out, not to push for reconciliation, but to say I'm proud of you. I heard you bought a house. That's wonderful. You're building a life. A good life. I'm happy for you. That's all. Take care. I sat in my car in the parking lot of the grocery store, listening to the message 3 times. Her voice sounded different. Softer. Less certain. There was no manipulation in her tone, no hidden agenda. Just a mother telling her daughter she was proud. Something I'd waited my entire life to hear. And now that I'd heard it, I didn't know what to do with it. I called Daniel. He answered on the second ring. Hey, what's up? My mom left me a voicemail. Saying what? That she's proud of me. That she's happy I bought a house. That she completed probation early. There was a pause. How do you feel about that? I don't know. Confused? Cautious? Part of me wants to believe she's really changed. Part of me thinks this is just another manipulation. Both of those things can be true, he said. She might be genuinely trying to change. And you can still keep your boundaries in place while she does. So I don't call her back. Not unless you want to. And only if you're ready. I'm not ready. Then don't. It's that simple. I sat there for a moment longer, phone pressed to my ear, groceries warming in the back seat. Okay. I won't call back. But I think I might save the message. Just in case. In case what? In case someday I want to remember what it felt like to hear her say she was proud of me. The house closing went smoothly. We signed stacks of papers and collected keys and drove immediately to our new home. It was empty and echoing and full of possibility. We walked through each room slowly, Daniel pointing out where furniture could go, me already planning paint colors and curtain styles. The backyard was overgrown but salvageable. Wild roses climbed the back fence. A gnarled apple tree stood in the corner, branches heavy with early buds. This is ours, I said, standing in the middle of the living room. Daniel wrapped his arms around me from behind. This is ours, he agreed. No one can take it away. No one can make us feel small in it. This is our space. Our home. Our life. I leaned back into him, feeling the weight of that truth settle into my bones. We spent the rest of the afternoon measuring rooms and making lists and dreaming out loud about the life we'd build here. Moving day was chaotic but joyful. Nicole and Sam helped us load boxes. Melanie showed up with coffee and donuts. Aunt Lorraine directed traffic like a general commanding troops. By evening, everything was piled haphazardly in the appropriate rooms, and we ordered pizza for everyone who'd helped. We sat on the floor of our empty living room, eating off paper plates, laughing about how Daniel had almost dropped an entire bookshelf down the stairs. After everyone left, Daniel and I made up the bed in our new bedroom. We were exhausted and sore and happy. This is perfect, I said, crawling under the covers. It really is, he agreed. Pulling me close. We lay there in the dark, listening to the unfamiliar sounds of our new home settling around us. The creak of floorboards. The hum of the refrigerator. The distant sound of neighbors talking on their porch. Everything felt new and slightly strange and absolutely right. Summer came hot and bright. I spent weekends working in the garden, pulling weeds and planting herbs and slowly bringing order to the chaos. Daniel built raised beds for vegetables. We hosted barbecues for friends. Nicole and Sam became regular fixtures, coming over most Sundays for dinner and board games. Melanie visited once a month, usually bringing flowers or wine and staying late into the evening talking about everything and nothing. One Saturday in July, I was kneeling in the garden when I heard the front gate creak. I looked up, hands covered in dirt, and saw my mother standing there. She looked older than I remembered. Thinner. Her hair had more gray in it. She held a small potted plant, something with delicate purple flowers. I'm sorry, she said immediately. I should have called first. I know I should have. But I was driving by and I saw you in the garden and I just... She trailed off, looking uncertain in a way I'd never seen her look before. I stood up slowly, wiping my hands on my jeans. What are you doing here? I brought you a housewarming gift. She held out the plant. It's lavender. I remember you always liked the smell. I did like lavender. I still did. But I didn't take the plant. I just stood there, heart pounding, trying to figure out how I felt. Daniel appeared in the doorway, alerted by voices. He took in the scene quickly and came to stand beside me. Mrs. Reid, he said neutrally. Daniel. She nodded at him, then looked back at me. I'm not here to push. I'm not here to demand anything. I just wanted to see you. To see that you're happy. To tell you in person that I'm sorry. For everything. My throat felt tight. I don't know what to say to that. You don't have to say anything, she said. I just needed you to hear it. From me. Face to face. Not in a letter or a voicemail. We stood there in awkward silence, the afternoon sun beating down, the smell of lavender drifting between us. Finally I said, "I'm not ready for a relationship with you. I might never be ready. I understand. But you can leave the plant." She looked up, hope flickering in her eyes. Yeah. I'll take care of it." She set the lavender down carefully on the porch step. "Thank you. For listening. For not slamming the door in my face." I nodded, not trusting my voice. She turned to leave, then paused. "You've built a beautiful life, Vanessa. I can see that. And I'm genuinely happy for you. I know I don't get to be part of it. But I'm still happy it exists." She walked back through the gate and down the sidewalk to her car. I watched until she drove away, then sat down hard on the porch step next to the lavender. Daniel sat beside me. "You okay?" "I think so." That was big. Yeah. It was. "Do you believe her? About being sorry?" "I don't know. Maybe. Does it matter?" I thought about that. Maybe not. Maybe what matters is that I held my boundary. That I didn't let her back in just because she showed up and said the right words. Daniel put his arm around me. "I'm proud of you." I leaned into him. "I'm proud of me too." We sat there for a while, watching the afternoon fade into evening, the lavender sitting between us like a bridge to nowhere and everywhere at once. Later that night, I planted it in the garden. Not because I'd forgiven her. Not because I was ready to reconcile. But because it was a nice plant and I liked lavender and I deserved to have beautiful things in my garden regardless of where they came from. August brought our first wedding anniversary. Daniel surprised me with a weekend trip to the coast. We stayed in a small bed and breakfast overlooking the ocean, spending our days walking on the beach and our evenings eating seafood and talking about the year we'd had. "It's been quite a year," Daniel said over dinner on our anniversary night. "The understatement of the century," I said with a laugh. "But we made it. We did. And we're stronger for it." He raised his glass. "To surviving. To thriving," I corrected, clinking my glass against his. "To building a life worth protecting." We drove home Sunday evening, tired and sunburned and content. As we pulled into our driveway, I looked at the house we'd bought, the garden I'd planted, the life we'd created, and felt something settle deep in my chest. Not quite peace. Not quite closure. But something close. Something that felt like coming home after a very long journey. Daniel carried our bags inside while I checked the mail. Bills. Catalogs. And one more cream-colored envelope in my mother's handwriting. I held it for a moment, then set it on the kitchen counter unopened. I'd read it eventually. Or maybe I wouldn't. Either way, it didn't have power over me anymore. I'd built something she couldn't touch. Something she couldn't control or manipulate or take away. I'd built myself. And that was enough. 2 years had passed since the wedding that almost wasn't. I stood in our kitchen on a Tuesday morning, coffee in hand, watching Daniel button his shirt while simultaneously trying to read case files spread across the counter. Some things never changed. The house had transformed around us. Fresh paint replaced the beige we'd inherited. Photographs lined the hallway, capturing moments we'd deliberately chosen to remember. The garden out back had become my meditation space, rows of vegetables and herbs growing alongside that lavender plant my mother had brought. We'd found our rhythm. Work and home and the quiet intimacy of building something sustainable. I'd been promoted again, leading a department now instead of just a team. Daniel had made senior agent, though he rarely talked about work unless something was bothering him. We'd learned each other's silences, the comfortable ones and the ones that needed addressing. My relationship with Melanie had deepened slowly, carefully. She'd gotten engaged last spring to someone who treated her with genuine kindness. We had lunch every other week now, conversations that felt real instead of performative. She'd asked me to be her maid of honor. I'd said yes without hesitation. My mother remained at a distance I'd chosen and maintained. She sent cards on birthdays and holidays. Brief notes that never asked for more than I was willing to give. I responded sometimes. Other times I didn't. The guilt that used to accompany those choices had faded. Dr. Chen had helped me understand that maintaining boundaries wasn't cruelty. It was self-preservation. That morning, my phone rang while I was getting ready for work. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. Something made me pick up. Vanessa Reid? A woman's voice asked. Yes. This is Detective Martinez with Portland PD. I'm calling about Patricia Reid. Is she your mother? My stomach dropped. Yes. What happened? There's been an accident. She's at Mercy Hospital. She's stable, but she's asking for you. I sat down on the edge of the bed, phone pressed to my ear. What kind of accident? Car accident. Not life-threatening, but she'll need surgery on her leg. She was quite insistent that we contact you. I looked up at Daniel, who'd stopped mid-button, watching my face. I'll be there in 30 minutes, I said, and hung up. The drive to the hospital felt surreal. Daniel insisted on coming with me. We didn't talk much, both processing what this meant. When we arrived, a nurse directed us to a room on the 3rd floor. My mother lay in the bed, her leg elevated and wrapped, her face pale but alert. When she saw me, her eyes filled with tears. You came, she said softly. I came. I stood near the door, Daniel beside me, keeping physical distance even as I'd shown up. The doctor says you'll be okay. They're scheduling surgery for tomorrow. She nodded. I'm sorry they called you. I know we're not. She paused, searching for the right word. We're not close anymore. No. But you're still my mother. And I'm still human. Her face crumpled slightly. Thank you. For coming. Even after everything. We stayed for an hour. She told us about the accident, a pickup truck running a red light, the terrifying moment of impact. She didn't ask me for anything beyond presence. Didn't guilt me for the distance between us. Didn't try to leverage this crisis into reconciliation. When I said we needed to go, she just nodded. Will you come back? After the surgery? To make sure you're okay? Yes. The relief on her face was palpable. Thank you. In the parking lot, Daniel asked how I felt. Okay, I said. I think I'm okay. That was big, what you just did. I know. But it felt right. I can show up in an emergency without erasing my boundaries. Those things can coexist. He kissed my forehead. You've come a long way. We both have. I visited her twice more during her hospital stay. Brief visits, compassionate but boundaried. I made sure she had what she needed but didn't become her caretaker. Melanie took the lead on coordinating her recovery care, and I supported from the periphery. It felt appropriate. Sustainable. Like maybe we'd found a version of family that could exist without destroying me. 3 months later, Melanie got married. The ceremony was small and beautiful, held in a garden not unlike mine. My mother attended, walking with a cane but present. We spoke briefly at the reception, surface-level pleasantries about the weather and the flowers. It didn't hurt the way it used to. It just was. Dancing with Daniel that evening, I realized something had shifted. The anger had faded. The desperate need for her approval had quieted. What remained was something simpler. Sadness for what we'd never have. Acceptance of what was. And gratitude for what I'd built despite it all. On the drive home, Daniel asked what I was thinking about. I was thinking that some stories don't get happy endings, I said. They just get honest ones. And maybe that's enough. He squeezed my hand. More than enough. That night, I stood in our backyard under a sky full of stars. The lavender had spread, filling the air with its calming scent. Inside, Daniel was making tea, humming off-key to a song on the radio. This was my life now. Not perfect. Not without scars. But wholly, entirely mine. I thought about the girl I'd been, standing outside that junk house in the rain, terrified of choosing herself. I thought about the woman I'd become, standing in a garden she'd planted, in a home she'd bought, in a marriage she'd fought for. The distance between those two versions of myself felt immeasurable. My mother would probably never be the parent I'd needed. We'd probably never have the relationship I'd once desperately wanted. But I'd stopped waiting for her to change so I could start living. I'd built my own foundation, chosen my own family, created my own definition of home. And that, more than any apology or reconciliation, had set me free. The federal badge Daniel carried had been the catalyst for accountability. But the real transformation had been internal. Learning that my worth wasn't negotiable. That boundaries weren't walls but bridges to healthier relationships. That choosing myself wasn't selfish but necessary. These truths had rebuilt me from the inside out. I walked back inside, closing the door softly behind me. Daniel handed me tea and we curled up on the couch, his arm around my shoulders, comfortable silence settling between us. Outside, the garden continued growing. Inside, so did we. And somewhere in the space between what was and what could be, I'd finally found peace. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.